One thing last night's primary results cemented is the generational divide in the Democratic Party. In Michigan alone, 82% of voters between the ages of 18 and 29 voted for Sanders, while 73% of voters over the age of 65 supported Biden. And on the national level, the latest Chegg College Pulse poll, student election tracker, shows 76% of college students favor Sanders, only 20% support Biden.
Wow. To dive more into that generational divide in the American electorate is Jake Gaba. He joins us now via Skype. He's Vice President of Marketing for College Pulse. Great to have you, Jake. Great to see you.
Good to see you, Jake.
It's great to be here.
Absolutely.
So just lay on a little bit of what you found, and in particular, the sort of demographic breakdown for the young college voters that you all have focused on.
Yes. So Bernie Sanders is not only leading among all Democratic college students, he's up 76% to 20%, as you just said. But Bernie Sanders is leading among all demographic breakdowns of college students, no matter how you slice it. So among males, Bernie Sanders is 67% versus Joe Biden, 19%. Females, 72% for Bernie Sanders versus 17% for Joe Biden. Among non-binary students, 88% for Bernie Sanders versus 5% for Joe Biden. No matter how you slice it, Bernie Sanders.
That's pretty remarkable, Jake.
In the lead.
Yeah, and so, Jake, do we have a sense yet of how, despite these results, do we actually know? One thing Crystal and I have been trying to track is on voter enthusiasm, whether they'll actually come out to the polls for somebody that they don't necessarily agree with, like a Joe Biden. Do you have any sense of that in the polling data that you have in front of you?
So that is one question that we're going to nail down specifically over this next week. Some other data that indirectly gets at that question is looking at how enthusiastic students are about the current situation in the Democratic primary. And over half, over 50% of students have some reservations about the current situation and the two front runners. So we can't say for certain whether Bernie supporters will still come out to vote if Biden is ultimately the nominee, but we'll be nailing down on that in the next week.
Great.
Very, very interesting. And talk to us about, one of the generational divides that we've been tracking here that I think is incredibly significant is older voters repeatedly told pollsters the only thing we care about is beating Donald Trump. We don't really care where you are on the issues. It's nice. We like Medicare for all. We like these things, but we really just want to beat Trump. For younger voters, it was very much a different story. These were policy-driven votes. It's been a policy-driven affinity for Bernie Sanders. What does your data tell us about that?
Yes. So students care about the issues. The top issues that we've seen repeatedly throughout our time tracking student preference during this election season is, number one, students care about the environment and climate change. 38% of students rate that as their number one issue. 38% of Democratic college students rate environment and climate change as their number one issue. 20% rate the growing gap between the rich and poor as their top issue, which that is the foundation of Bernie Sanders' campaign. So it's not a big surprise that that's a major issue for students, and Bernie Sanders is incredibly popular among students.
What can you tell us about the ideological breakdown of students there, Jake?
Yes. So it's about, give me one moment. So breakdown between who would support Donald Trump versus a Democratic candidate in the general election. It's about 70% of students will be supporting the Democratic candidate versus 20% supporting Donald Trump, with the rest either on the fence or not wanting to vote at all.
Very interesting stuff, Jake. Let us know when you get those numbers about, how students are feeling about potentially voting for Joe Biden. I think that's something that Democrats may very much want to hear.
Absolutely. Thanks, Jake.
Thanks,
Appreciate
Jake.
you joining us.
Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. Next on Rising, friend of the show, host of the Young Turks, Cenk Uygur, joins us to weigh in on last night's primary results. I think he'll have some thoughts.